What have you noticed from those that get off to a fast start and see success for that new agent that's out there, wherever they're at in the world watching, and they're like, man, I don't want to not make it?
Yeah.
What have you seen? What have you noticed?
Well, the biggest thing is you've got to work. You know, we don't have a clock to clock in and a clock to clock out on. And so what I see is that people go out and they'll make more money in a week than they've ever made. Yep. And then the next week, they don't work 40 hours. You know, like, I've never had $1,000 in my checking account. And next week, they're like, well, I'm going to stay at home. And then when there's no activity that week, then it's like, oh my gosh, and then the panic mode sets in. So I have this thing that I tell people, and that is, get up, get dressed, and go to work. Greatest week of your life, fantastic. Get up, get dressed, go to work.
I've heard you say this several times, by the way, and I love it.
And so when people, have had a bad week, the way you get past a bad week, the way you get past the nerves is to get out of the car and go talk to people.
Welcome back to the CA Power Players Podcast, live every Tuesday, 8 a.m. Central Standard Time. Today I got a special guest, one of my good buddies. We actually went to the same college in Baptist Bible College, and we didn't even know it until we found each other from Little Rock, Arkansas, Mr. Jason Everett.
Hello. I'm so glad to be here today. And you know what? It is so hard to believe that in such a small college that we both went there.
Yeah, it's nuts, man. It's crazy. We went same year too. We were going to we actually roomed together in the dorm. And
might be a few years difference.
Just a couple, right? Just a couple. So Jason Everett's with Globe Life, Agency Owner of the Year for the Liberty National Division in 2016 and 2021. Number one agency in production for 10 years in a row. Which is so impressive. I know. Here's what I want to unpack today, okay? As you're listening to this podcast, this gentleman has a ton of industry experience. How long have you been in the insurance industry?
19 years last month.
19 years last month. Congratulations.
Yeah, thank you.
20-year anniversary next year in 2023, which is awesome. So I want to extrapolate like industry experience, what he's learned. Agents will learn techniques and tips and strategies and ideas from Jason today. You also learn, even outside of being an agent, some agency owner, right? You want to get into leadership and management and help others. Maybe you have a heart for people. This dude does for sure. I can promise you'll enjoy today's episode. Okay, so here's one of the things I want to start out with is, what's the biggest difference between producing and managing producers?
A lot.
Yeah.
Here's what I would always tell people is, if you want to be concerned about yourself, you need to be a producer. And there's nothing wrong with that. You know, we both have a great friend of ours that's a producer, and that's what he does, and he knocks it out of the park. But what really got me into wanting to serve others was I wanted to make a lasting impact. You know, they say that your legacy only lives as long as your name is still spoken about.
That's so good.
I want my legacy to be able to live generations. And, you know, I think of different people that have started with us over the years, and they have built up a renewal income that's going to impact their kids and their grandkids. I just happen to believe that at some point, you know, as they tell their grandkids about how they started in the insurance business, that they're going to say, you know, a guy named Jason Everett hired me. And you know, after he hired me, it made all the difference in the world in the way that we were able to live. And so I think if you're somebody and you love people and you want to leave a lasting impact, that's where management comes in.
Yes. How rewarding is that too?
Oh, it doesn't matter how much money I made last year. What matters to me is the lives I got to impact.
You talked about serving and impacting. That's clearly, and I've seen it with your team and your people, and you guys have an awesome culture. I actually got a chance to speak down in Maumelle at your event either earlier this year or last year.
Yeah, January,
yes, which was a blast. Amazing energy. Like, those that are watching this, I love you guys. You guys are awesome. Keep pushing, keep striding. Awesome agents and team. I was welcomed with open arms, which was amazing, incredible. What I was curious of is, as that's continued to happen, what was it about? Where does the serving and impacting come from? Like, you're clearly really care about that a lot. Where does that come from? Is that parents? Is it childhood? Is it the way you were raised?
Yeah, that's exactly it. When I was a kid, I remember taking the little test at school about what do you want to be when you grow up, you know?
Yeah.
And it was a preacher or a politician were the two that would always pop up. And so I guess this is a good in-between here. And so all I really ever wanted to do was just love people and serve people and be able to take care of my family. And my parents are that way. And so my entire life growing up, you know, my mom, she cleaned our church, and my dad was always Mr. Handy Fix-It if anybody needed him. He's there, and still today, he's that way. So it was instilled in me at a young age. But I think it has continued into our agency because we have great people that love people. And I think it really starts with, you know, we even talk all the time about make tomorrow better. That's our mission in our agency and our company is make tomorrow better. So when you talk about it and you live it out and people get to see how that changes, I think that's really what keeps that going.
Yeah. You also talked about generational wealth and just your name passing through generations and helping others in a massive way so that it lives on and it carries on and it helps the further generations after you, which is a bigger think than a lot of people have. Maybe they're sitting there right now, they're listening, they're watching, they don't have that think yet. You also, at your last event, I think there were wristbands and the whole theme was think bigger, right? It was like, okay, Cody's got think big, we think bigger, right? Where does the big think come from? The thinking bigger, the helping generations. Like that's a bigger think than maybe somebody that's a brand new agent listening right now.
You know, I think it kind of goes back to when I started with this company. My only goal was to just be able to pay my bills and get out of debt. I never knew anybody that made $100,000 a year. Like $100,000, you know?
Yeah.
And so when I made $100,000 at 23, that was like, oh my gracious. I remember I went home that Christmas and I told my dad, I was like, hey, you're going to be so proud of me. I've made over 100,000. He said, boy, I don't know if what you did was illegal, but we're not coming to see you in prison. Right. And so, I mean, we didn't know anybody that legally made $100,000 a year. And so
certainly not in Arkansas.
That's right. Yeah. So when I made 100,000, then it was like, you know, what would it be if I could ever make 250? Right. And then could you imagine what it may be to make $500,000 a year?
Yeah.
And then, you know, then to ever dream of making, you know, 7 figures plus. I never dreamed of that. And so what I try to tell people is you think 75,000 is thinking big. And what I want you to know is if I only made 75,000, my kids wouldn't eat, right? Because
7 kids.
We're at a different level now. And so I just believe people need to think much bigger. You know, I think one of the things people struggle with their whole life, they've been told how they're not good, how they're not, you know, good looking, ugly, whatever. And so they get beat down over life. And what they need to know is you're able. You know, the way to get to freedom in life, it's on the other side of fear. Got to get past the fear, and then you can live with freedom. And you just got to do it.
Yes. That's so good, man. You've also worked with a lot of new agents, too, along the way that you've seen. Those that get off to a fast start and have success in your agency versus those that don't, right? You'll have a much higher, like, success rate than the average failure rate in the industry. Like, there's a lot of hands-on training. They help a lot of people. They got a great culture, phenomenal systems, training, etc. People that can plug into. What have you noticed from those that get off to a fast start and see success for that new agent that's out there, wherever they're at in the world watching, and they're like, man, I don't want to not make it?
Yeah.
What have you seen? What have you noticed?
Well, the biggest thing is you've got to work. You know, we don't have a clock to clock in and a clock to clock out on. And so what I see is that people go out and they'll make more money in a week than they've ever made. And then the next week, they don't work 40 hours. You know, like, I've never had $1,000 in my checking account. And next week, they're like, well, you know, I'm going to stay at home. And then when there's no activity that week, then it's like, oh, my gosh, you know, and then the panic mode sets in. So I have this thing that I tell people, and that is get up, get dressed, and go to work. Greatest week of your life, fantastic. Get up, get dressed, go to work.
I've heard you say this several times, by the way, and I love it.
And so when people have had a bad week, the way you get past a bad week, the way you get past the nerves is to get out of the car and go talk to people. Mm-hmm. When we are out prospecting for businesses or individuals, I can sit in front of a house or I can sit in front of a business and I can convince myself of 1,000 reasons I shouldn't go in there. They look busy. I bet I shouldn't go in there. I'd be interrupting them. No, when I pull in, I put it in park and I'm walking in. I mean, I've even caught myself, car still moving and I'm getting out because I don't want to sit there and think about it. Action is what's going to get you to be successful. That's the first part. Second part is I think you got to be able to have a home life where you have support. I was very blessed with my wife, Sarah, that when I would come home, she never asked me, how much money did you make today? It was, did you give it all of your effort? And she never complained when I wasn't home at 7 p.m. I didn't have a time to be home. It was, you go get the job done, because we understand what the mission is. And the mission is that we're tired of living paycheck to paycheck. Yeah. And so that's what I went out there and did. And that would be two of the major things. Go to work and treat every day just like you did yesterday. Mm-hmm. And then for the spouses out there, you got to support those that are out there getting it done.
Yes. Take some action, have some support along the way.
You have great support at home, right?
No doubt.
Big deal.
Phenomenal. It does make such a big difference. Mm-hmm. Confidence. I mean, you got a good point. We're talking about this. This is a phenomenal point. Like you get home and you get beat up. It's not going to help for the next day. That's for sure. I can't imagine how many spouses and just family get beat up for lack of results.
Oh, yeah.
It has to happen so much, too. Also, you said another thing, too, that I wanted to extrapolate a little bit, which was most people, they make some money, but they only work when they're broke. Where's that come from? Why are we wired that way? Some of us, I don't know.
Yeah. I think it just is the culture today that we live in, that we live in, where we are always worried about just feeding our flesh and feeling happy and, bed feels good. I mean, the Bible talks about that if you lay in bed, you're going to get hungry. And, I think there's just sometimes we've not been shown the right way. And I think, we're kind of in that right now where, our parents didn't do that in some degree. And I think we have to break that chain.
Yes. How'd you earn $100K at 23? What'd that look like? What'd you do?
Well, I tell people I had my PhD that year. I was just poor, hungry, and determined. And I tell you, I had no idea that I was on track for that. My first 6 months were not great, Cody. I probably, if I made $20,000 my first 6 months, I'd be amazed. But it was that second 6 months, and that's another point that I tell people all the time is you've got to commit to this thing for a year, because that second 6 months, that steam is really picking up for you.
That's good.
But at the end of that year, I'd made $112,000, and as I looked back, it was really that when I was told I needed to run 3 appointments a day or 5 appointments a day, I ran 15. I would start at 8 o'clock in the morning, and sometimes I would set my last appointment at 8 p.m., knowing that the people that stood me up, I would then have an hour or two to go back and try to get them. And there was days where, I didn't come home till 1 or 2 o'clock in the morning because I was 3 or 4 hours away from home and I worked. And
wow.
And the other great thing that I think we have today that I would love to have had is I just had a back seat full of maps. I would have loved to have had a GPS.
Can you imagine?
I can't imagine what that would have been. And then, I was in the first probably generation of folks that had a cell phone there. But the problem is, in a lot of areas that I worked, the cell phone wouldn't get out, so I'd have to, find a place for it to get out. But making those calls while you go down the road, why have the radio on listening to music when you can be making phone calls? I mean, or listening to the podcast, right? But
that's right.
You need to be listening to podcasts, growing yourself.
Cody, right?
That's right. Yeah. Either be growing yourself or setting appointments. There should not be any dead time. And then, the other thing that I think I did well at was getting referrals. So I would build a relationship with somebody. I would show them exactly how we could help them. And then whether or not they bought or not, I wasn't leaving without some referrals. And I've always had this mindset that people fall into one of 4 categories. One, they need my product. Mm-hmm. Number 2, they need a job. Number 3, they know somebody that needs what we have. or number 4, they know companies that need our product. And so everybody that you meet is a potential to help you move your business along. And so talk to everybody.
It's good.
Yeah.
I love that. Let's jump to, I have an interesting question. I'm curious how you're going to answer this. Okay. Let's see what y'all think of this. Let me know what you think of my question and his answer in comments. Okay. If you had to start over today and you plugged in to your agency, it was somebody else in charge, whatever, what would you do? What would your week look like? How many appointments would you run? What would the math look like? What kind of success would you have if you had to start over today?
Yeah. So I think the first thing I want to address in that is if I started in our agency today, it would look totally different than it did when I started. I was given very little training. I was basically given some brochures and some applications and said, when you make a sale, come back in.
It's all you need,
And,
right?
Right. Yeah. You know, you die, we pay. You know, that was the training on life insurance. And now we actually train you for an entire week in our classroom. Then we train you for 2 weeks in the field. And then every week we have trainings that we do. And then when you reach certain levels, we send you to our home office for more training. And so we're always training. But anyway, to answer your question, not to go ahead of it, is I believe that the one thing I would do different is I wouldn't worry about the process. I worried so much about the process that I didn't enjoy it because I was always worried that I was going to run out of people to sell and I was going to, run out of places to go, and that's never going to happen. And instead, I would really spend more time growing myself to be the future leader I wanted to become. And I would try to emulate what I wanted to become, not try to emulate those that I didn't want to be like. So I don't know if that answers your question completely, but I believe that if I made $100,000 my first year, if I was started today and I did everything that we teach people to do, I believe it's a $200,000 plus first year because the opportunity today is much greater than it was in 2003 when I started.
Yes. If someone will plug in and be coachable and reach out to you and y'all can help them, how fast could they get to 6 figures if they just learned, plugged in, and did what they were told?
This is a great question because I have a success story from this last year. We had this guy. His name is Luke. Luke is a rapper. Okay.
Whoa.
You can look him up online. Bald Knob Double L. Okay. You'll see his stuff there, and he should pay me for giving his YouTube
some
stuff.
promo.
And Luke was a oil well worker, and I have to be honest with you. When he was brought in the first time and was meeting with me, I thought, boy, this is going to be a hard transition for him because he's used to being on a pipeline. But the thing that he was missing his kids and his wife, and he was leaving for 2-3 months at a time. And he was like, I'm making 6 figures, but it's not worth the life I'm living. And I'm like, I promise you, if you'll come in and apply what we teach you, you'll do that. That guy in 9 months made 6 figures.
Wow.
And he was able to replace his income. And today, if you were to see Luke a year and a half ago and you were to see Luke today, it's like 2 total different people. He looks like a businessman. And and so it's amazing to see how lives change. I have another agent out of our Dallas location who was raised basically homeless and now is making 6 figures a year and now sending money to help her family get out of poverty.
Amazing.
And it's just story after story after story of people that came in and applied themselves and changed their lives. And I think, one of them is I have a lady that was on disability. And she couldn't raise her kids on a disability check. And she said, I'm not going to take disability anymore. And now she's off of disability, making 6 figures a year.
Good for her.
Her kids have a new home. When I hired her, they were eating roadkill and living with her ex-husband. Roadkill. I always thought that was a joke. I never knew there was people that actually did that.
Oh, my gosh.
And so to see that is why I get up in the morning. And that's why I love what you're doing, because you're helping change people's lives. And really, we're without excuse. Just get up and go to work and grow yourself.
That's it, man. That's it.
Yeah.
Yes. You can tell that's why I love this guy so much, man. He cares. He gives. And he's helping people. You know, what all areas y'all helping agents in? Just out of curiosity.
Well, we help them grow in the worksite industry. We help them in the individual industry. So we do virtual. So we have an opportunity in that. And then we also have our new broker partnership that's going good.
Can you work with agents anywhere or only?
We can.
Oh, anywhere.
Yeah, anywhere.
Good.
And
Good.
so anywhere but New York. And so that's, but yes,
that's
love
New York's fault,
opportunity.
not his. Okay.
Not mine.
Come on.
Yeah. And so, yeah, reach out to us if you're feeling like right now you're not getting trained the way that you feel like you should be trained, then we have an opportunity for you.
That's good. I love it. Why B2B? You've had a lot of success in that world.
Yeah. Yeah. I started out my career in individual,
Okay.
and then I transitioned to business to business. One of the main reasons was that I could go out and convince one person for a need of insurance, and I was able to sell 30 people. Instead of going to a house and selling one policy. And then the other thing was those 30 people all have spouses that work somewhere. And so my opportunity to get referrals to those other companies were greater. And so that's what made that transition. But the other part that was just an add-on was I have small children. As you mentioned earlier, I have 7 boys, and my wife at 5 o'clock, 5:30, 6 o'clock, she's ready to see me. And I'd spent all those years
ready for you to help with the kids.
In there, yeah, it's like, it's your turn. Yeah. And so that allowed, when a business closes at 5:30, that allowed me to be home, 6:30 and to be able to be a dad. But what we have learned through COVID is the opportunity for the virtual side of things, whether it's to the business or individual, is fantastic. And we're doing a lot of insurance that way, and that's a huge opportunity.
Yeah, it's huge. It's also, I like the approach because it's instead of one-to-one, it's one-to-many.
That's right.
And it's just such a cool model. I love that. I've always been really intrigued by it as well. You talked earlier about renewal income. How important is that in the business? If somebody's neglecting it and not paying attention to it, why should they consider it more?
Yeah. Well, when I started, I remember them talking about renewals, and it really didn't matter because I needed a check Friday. Okay. But 19 years later, when I look at my renewal statement, and I'm still getting paid off policies from 2003.
That's
and
insane,
I look at
isn't it?
35, 50 cents, and I think about that person's paid me 50 cents a month for almost 20 years.
Wow.
That is amazing. And then I see these things just to continue to go up and up and up. And now my renewals in a month were more than my income was when I started, just to think before I get out of bed. And if God forbid something were to happen to me, that's going to continue to my kids and grandkids. And when you start talking about investing in your business, what I'm able to do with this renewal income is take it and invest it right back into my business to be able to grow it and make a bigger impact. And so I would just tell people, if you're not sure about your renewals, you need to get that sure, because that's the reason people choose a career. The number one reason somebody chooses a career in our industry is residual income.
Yes.
And so you need to know how it works.
Yes, you do. What's some tips they can take away for referrals? You talked about referrals a lot, how important it is, how much helped you, and how much you can help others.
Yeah, I call it the golden ticket. And so as I'm, let's use a business, for instance. If I've completed the business and I've enrolled the employees and I'm done with that business, I go in there and say something like this: Cody, I just want you to know this has been fantastic. You guys have, of your 30 people, 28 of them had a need for insurance, and we got them all covered. But one of the things that we noticed was that some of the people that you thought would never have a need had a need. And so I just want you to feel good about this decision. And then I go over how much coverage there and how much is going to be able to be through Section 125 and what we're going to save. And then I end it with this. Now, I know as a business owner, other people, whether it's the person across the street or the plumbing company or who you buy your supplies for. I try to be specific. Would you be able, on the back of your business card, Cody, would you just simply write to John across the street, John, would you give Jason 3 minutes of your time and sign it? And I walk out with that. I walk out with that business card, and then I walk into John's place and I say, John, Cody across the street wanted me to bring you a message. And I hand him Cody's business card, and it says, John, would you give Jason 3 minutes of your time? well, all right, you're here. I've got 3 minutes. Great. And then I can go right through my presentation. And that gives me implied endorsement. And it also gets me past the gatekeeper.
Yes.
If I say, hey, I was over at Cody's business. He wanted me to make sure John got this message. Then it gets me past that gatekeeper as well.
Yes. It really speeds it up.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. And then on the individual side, we have a program where we can give accidental death coverage away. And so we allow them to choose other people that they want to sponsor to receive that accidental death coverage. And then that's how we get referrals off of that.
That's cool. That's a conversation starter.
Oh, huge.
Yeah.
Yeah, your son Cody cares a lot about you. He wanted to make sure you got some accidental death coverage.
Good.
And then, then the follow-up question, too, is as we're collecting beneficiaries. So let's say you're not married and I'm writing you a policy and you say, yeah, I want my sister Susie to be the beneficiary. All right, well, in case anything were to ever happen to you, can I get Susie's phone number? And I get Susie's phone number and I say, I'm going to reach out to Susie and let her know that you have chosen for her to be the beneficiary. Okay, so I get there okay with that. Then my phone call to Susie is, hey, Susie, my name's Jason, and Cody has chosen for you to be his beneficiary. I wanted you to have my information. And now one of the things I like to do with any of our beneficiaries is make sure we do a needs analysis to see if you have a need. So then we uncover a need there, and that gives us another opportunity through beneficiaries and also contingent beneficiaries.
Yeah. That's strong. That's so good, man. I mean, that's I love that so much is in the industry, the number one thing agents struggle with is getting in front of people, and you're helping them get in front of a lot more people as well, which is cool. And it's speeding it up, getting past the gatekeeper, creating an endorsement, making it real. I love the speed behind that too. I'm curious to this, just a couple questions left. What would be, as you think over the 19 years and growing as a leader and helping people, how do you think you've grown, and what's some of the biggest things that you've learned along the way when it comes to helping people and just growing as a leader?
So one of the things that I've learned is that you can't care about people's success more than they do. And when you love people, that's so hard. Like sometimes I want to take people and I want to shake them and just say, I really wish you would listen to me. And I've often joked that I wish that I had a time capsule and I could put you in it and go 10 years in the future and say, if you do it my way, this is what your life will look like. Wow. Now let's go back. Let's get in your time capsule and go 10 years. Because here's what I've seen in 19 years. I can't tell you how many emails and phone calls from people that have left said that was the biggest mistake of my life. And yet when I have people and they come to me and they say, I just don't know if this is for me, I just want to say, golly, listen to me. I've had other people in your same shoes. And so that's a big one. The thing that I've learned from, training agents is money doesn't motivate everybody. I believe money motivated everybody that was my age, but money doesn't motivate everybody now. So you have to find out what motivates them, and then you have to encourage them based upon that motivation. That's why you got to know your people at more than just a surface level. And one of the things that I talk about is you have to be friendly with your people. You got to be friendly, but also don't get too familiar. And so what I mean by too familiar is sometimes, when you're training an agent, they start talking about how bad their home life is and this situation. And then you feel like you're part of that. And so you're carrying on all of this struggle to your house at night. And that's not fair to your family to go with all of their problems. So be friendly, but not too familiar.
Yeah, that's so good. I love that. If someone's watching this, they're like, man, I like Jason Everett. I like what we're talking about. I can relate. I want to keep learning from him and what they're doing. How would they reach out and learn more from you? What would be the best way to do that?
Yeah, they could just email me at jeverett@libnat.com. That's JEVERETT@LIBNAT.com. Also, Cody, you'd be glad to know, since we met last time, you encouraged me to start our own podcast. We're not doing video. Yeah, but we're about to.
There we go.
But it's Globe Nation, so you can follow us on Globe Nation.
I like it. Globe Nation and email. This is a buddy of mine, so make sure if you actually have questions that you legit reach out. J Everett, that's JEVERETT @LIBNAT.com. libnap.com. Libnap.com. I love it, man. Appreciate you. Appreciate everything you're doing. I appreciate the relationship, and thanks for hanging out.
Absolutely.
And thanks for being on the podcast.
Thanks for doing all you do, and I'll see you in Dallas.
Yes, sir.
All right.
Thank you,
Thanks,
Mr.
buddy.
Jason Everett. Okay, appreciate you guys listening. Go check him out. Go follow, and keep listening to Power Players. Hey, if you enjoyed this, I got another one you're going to love. It's right there. Click on it. See you in there. So I got 3 key questions for you as we kick this thing off right now. Number 1, what is it that you really want? What keeps you up at night? I'm going to read a text.